We've allotted 1 hour for this. And at the end, probably sometime next week, we'll get the video to this posted on the link you'll see right there on the slide. So as we go through, you're going to be able to answer questions via the chat. And afterwards, what we'll do with all the questions that we have posted on here, I'll end up loading them on the frequently asked questions page after the presentation. So all the ones that are relevant, we'll have posted up on there. When you guys are typing in questions, if you see a question that you would like to see answered, you have a similar one, you can thumbs up it, and what it does is it'll move it to the top of the list so we can ensure that we can answer the question as we're going. All right. So what we're going to cover today, we'll go over definitions and regulations, particularly regulation 1015 and 1014 regarding reimbursement, how to fill out a TRR, some common mistakes that we see when filling them out, and then we'll cover the state controller officer's office audits as we go and try to give you guys some tools to make sure that that process goes as smoothly as possible for you if you happen to get audited by the state. So last fiscal year, 21-22, we received $33.4 million for local assistance from the state. And we only issued out, actually that number is just a little bit over 9 million last fiscal year. So we ended up having to give back almost $25 million back to the state for unused funds. So you guys can see that there's a lot of money out there for us to give you guys for training. And this fiscal year, I don't have the exact number, but we are very, very close to that $34 million mark for local assistance for this fiscal year. We'll start going through the regulations. Most of you guys are familiar with this grid as far as what plans give out what kind of reimbursement. You can see there. I'm going to go through these definitions and kind of what they mean over here. So subsistence, when you guys get ready to start doing these TR, subsistence means lodging and meals. So you're going to get paid for both when you fill out a TRR. What is a commuter lunch? Commuter lunch is reimbursed for each individual day attended by the trainee for courses spanning more than 1 day. So 1 day courses are not eligible for commuter lunch. Travel is mileage regardless if it's a vehicle or flight, and that's calculated as a straight line distance from your agency headquarters, or if you have a substation to wherever the address is on the class, back and forth. Tuition, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's how much the class costs. Then the next two, commuter trainee and resident trainee, sometimes we see this, there's some confusion when people start filling out TRRs. Commuter trainee is one who's going to drive back and forth from their agency to the class each day, whereas a resident trainee, just think of that as you're going to put them up in a hotel and they're going to collect meals. So when you're filling out those, it's really important that you get the correct one on here. And we'll go over more of that when I start covering how to fill them out. The next definition is backfill reimbursement. Sometimes we see this, it can cause issues with people when they're trying to calculate backfill. Those are available for plan 1s, 2s, and 7s. And just remember when you're putting in for backfill, the backfill must directly be connected to the release and backfill for a trainee, and you have to have records supporting the backfill claims, and they must be maintained. So like an overtime slip, you have to have, deputy so-and-so backfilled for this person while they're at class, and you're going to have to maintain those on file. We also, for backfill reimbursement, we're going to give you up to 16 hours for backfill for travel. So if you, and I have an example later on in this presentation on how to calculate that, but you do get travel time. So if a trainee's traveling on a Monday and you have to backfill that person's shift on that Monday, you can put in for backfill reimbursement for that training time. The other one too is where we see some issues when it comes up to submitting for backfill reimbursement. You're going to get 100% of the salary at time and a half for that person that is backfilling, but you cannot include incentive pays, hazard pays, education incentive, all that kind of stuff. So the best rule of thumb is just find out what the base pay is for that person that is backfilling. And then just time and a half that, and you can submit that based on the hours. And again, we'll go over that. I have an example on how to do that. So who is eligible? Obviously, full-time paid employees that belong to the post program are eligible for reimbursement. Also, non-sworn employees can submit for reimbursement as long as they are attending a course that is specific to their job assignment. So down in the regulation, we list who's eligible for non-sworn. So for example, like when we wouldn't authorize it. So if you're trying to send maybe a record supervisor to a SWAT class, obviously that's not going to be approved. But if it is specific to their job assignment, absolutely go ahead and submit for reimbursement through the TRR system. Who's not eligible? So if you have an employee whose salary is paid other than the agency, such as a federal grant or another funding source, they're not eligible to receive post reimbursement for expenditures that are covered by that grant. Also, reserves are not eligible because they're not full-time paid peace officers or employees. And jail deputies, as defined in our regulation 1001, they're not eligible for post reimbursement. Timelines when submitting a TRR, you have up to 60 days from the end of the fiscal year, and obviously fiscal year is July to June, to submit for TRRs. So if you have some for last fiscal year, I think it comes to August, you got through August 29th to submit for last fiscal year. To submit those, if it's a day late, they're going to be denied. So if you have some from last fiscal year, you might want to start going through go through your list and get them submitted so they're not late. So do we have any questions so far? No questions yet? There's no way I'm doing that good of a job. Sure.
Will community service officers, non-sworn employees who take post classes be included for reimbursements?
So CSOs, were they on the list? Stand by, let me look. So if I'm not able to answer a question today, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to print all the questions that come up and I will type them out and I will email everybody the questions. CSO's on there. Yeah, so CSO is. Yep, CSO is eligible under regulation 1014 for reimbursement.
If there's one more.
Okay, one more question. Is there a difference between tuition and registration? No, we usually just use the term tuition, so I assume you're talking registration fees. But as far as we're concerned, no. All right, so let's go into filling out a TRR. Obviously, you're going to have access to EDI, read-write access to EDI. What we're going to be covering here is I'll go over how to fill out a TRR. Looks like my laser pointed on a delay a little bit. And then the 3 reports that are listed below, I'll go through those a little bit later. So when you click on that top block to fill out a TRR, you have to make sure you're in the correct fiscal year when you're filling them out, and then you can click view presentations. Or if you want to manually look at a specific roster, you have to type in the whole course control number in there. So we'll go back to this one on view presentations. So if you click view presentations, you'll see a list similar to this. And out on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of trainees. Like the first one says 0 of 4 complete, 0 of 2 complete. So it's broken down by your class. When you want to go to fill one out, you'll click the control number all the way on the far left to go to fill it out, and it will show your trainees. So a lot of agencies, you may not want to be asking for reimbursement on these classes. For example, if it's an internal class and nobody traveled anywhere or whatever, and you're not going to submit for reimbursement. Several agencies, what they'll do is they'll submit blank TRRs to us. Now we get, I would say 40% of our TRRs that get submitted to us are blank TRRs. There is another way to do that so we don't get inundated with blank TRRs, and we call that excluding a trainee. So if you clicked on that control number, this would pop up, and let's say this officer or this class, you only had 2 officers. You can go over here, you can exclude all of them. So if you look at the class and you know we're not going to ask for reimbursement on all those trainees, you can just exclude them. And then they go away from your list. Or if you want to do it individually by trainee, you can definitely do that. You can do it trainee by trainee if you want to. There's nothing wrong with submitting blank TRRs. We don't really have a problem with that. It's just we get so many of them, it would benefit us if you tried the exclude button. So if for some reason you exclude a trainee and then you need to bring them back, you can go down here to re-include. So you can bring them back eventually. If you're like, oh, wait a second, I need to put in for a reimbursement for them. You can re-include them if you have to later on. All right, so let's say we're gonna select an individual trainee. So if I go out there and I want to fill out a TR for them, you click modify details, and then something similar to this is going to pop up. So for this class, we'll be using this class for a couple of examples. It's a 24-hour class and it's a plan 1. So backfill is available for a plan 1. If it's not, if the classes are not eligible for backfill, these 2 boxes down here, number of backfill hours and backfill salary, will not show up. You'll see down here station trainees assigned to. Some of the larger agencies have multiple stations where trainees are assigned. That will pop up, or you will put where they're from on there, because we'll calculate the mileage from their station house or the headquarters, whichever's closer. So if your headquarters is closer, it's going to default to the headquarters on our end. So when you first open the TRR, this is what you're going to see. For example, this trainee was a peace officer, and it's going to look like this when you first open it, leave blank. So this is what I mean when people will submit blank ones. They'll just leave it blank and they hit submit TRR, and then we end up getting $0 TRs. Like I said, which is fine, but because we get so many of them, we would prefer if you excluded them. So now let's for the sake of this scenario, we'll say that they're a resident trainee. So you go ahead and you click resident trainee, and then the next box will populate. If you leave this blank, then you're not getting any dollars for transportation. You can see because I click resident, subsistence is going to automatically be calculated. So as soon as you click resident, you're going to get subsistence reimbursement. You just have to decide, did they drive? Were they a passenger of a vehicle or other? That would be like a flight. So let's say that this person is the driver vehicle. So they drove a car down there, whether it was their personal vehicle or an agency vehicle. Obviously, they're not going to get commuter lunch. That goes away. But be sure that if you're looking to get the mileage, that you click the travel button. Click the travel button. If you don't click the travel button, the TRR on my end will just show that you're asking for subsistence and you're not going to get the mileage. Okay, and sometimes people don't want the mileage, and that's fine. What you can do and it can look like an error on my side, I'd be like, well, why didn't they ask for that? You could go out here in the comment box and just say we're not requesting travel, just subsistence only. Not a problem there. All right, so we click travel. And so now you're going to get the mileage. And so let's try to calculate backfill for this. So this is a 24-hour class. So down below, you can see that let's say for the example, they traveled on Monday, they went to class for 3 days for the 24-hour class, then they traveled home on Friday. But they work a 4-10 shift at your particular agency, and their shift is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, but that shift is a 10-hour shift. Now you can put in for backfill for the shift that's covered, it's not the hours of the class. What was the shift that was covered? So for the sake of this, we'll calculate how many hours of backfill. So how many hours of backfill can be requested for this particular scenario? You can actually put in for 40 hours. You get 30 for the class and you get 10 for travel. Because remember, we'll give you up to 16 hours for travel. Obviously, on Friday, we're not going to pay for your travel because you're not backfilling a shift behind that officer. because it's their day off. So you can put in for up to 30 hours. Now, if the officer worked 5/8 and it was Monday through Friday, obviously it's still going to be 40 hours because you get 8 on the front and 8 on the back. So it just depends on the shift. Oftentimes we get questions, can a supervisor backfill behind a peace officer? Yes, they can. Just remember though, when you're calculating the backfill, go base pay at time and a half. Do we have any questions so far that we need to answer?
If you initially submit TRR as blank, can you go back and resubmit if eligible expenses are located?
Yeah, you're gonna have to call us on that one, because once we approve it, we would have to go back. If that does happen, I would suggest reaching out to us, because that's gonna take some work on the back end for us to go ahead and fix that. So yes, it is possible. It is possible. Is that it? All right. So let's take that same class and let's say it's a commuter trainee. Remember, a commuter trainee is we're going to drive back and forth every day to the class. So they go driver, either they drove a vehicle or they can be the passenger of a vehicle. As soon as you click driver of the vehicle, because this is more than a one-day class, the commuter lunch and travel are going to come up. So if you're going to reimburse for commuter lunch, by all means, click the commuter lunch box. Lunchbox, how about that? Click the commuter lunchbox and then click the travel so you can get the mileage for that. I think I have an example there. If for some reason you're sending a couple together and they're just the passenger of the vehicle, have at it. They're eligible for commuter lunch. If you're going to reimburse for that, they're just not going to get obviously travel because they're the passenger of a vehicle. Any questions on that? Nope. All right, let's keep moving. So we'll go into some common mistakes or some things to be aware of. Some of the things that we've seen when processing the TRRs. Webinars. You're not going to get travel for webinars. We have had people try, but we're not going to pay for travel on webinars. So on those, you can just leave them blank or exclude the trainee. If it is a plan 1 or a 3 where tuition reimbursement is available, you can go ahead and leave it blank, submit it, but leave it blank because tuition is going to automatically be calculated and you'll get reimbursed for the tuition. There's no tuition boxes to check, obviously, on the eTRR. You're automatically going to get it if it falls under a plan 1 or 3. So you can submit the blank one and get the tuition, but you're not going to get any kind of travel for webinars. So what I mean by that, again, go back to, you can just exclude the trainee, or like I did down here, just submit this blank and you'll automatically get the tuition on the webinar. All right. So back-to-back classes and travel reimbursement. Here's some things that sometimes pop up for us. Let's say we have a resident trainee. So you're putting them up in a hotel and paying for meals, and they travel to 2 separate classes that are held back-to-back. Both of them are plan 4, and plan 4 allows for subsistence and lodging. So let's say class 1 was a Tuesday, Wednesday, and they go to the class number 2 on Thursday. So you paid for them to go, they're up in a hotel, all that kind of stuff. When you submit for a TRR, class 1, obviously submit for subsistence and travel, and class 2 just do some subsistence only, because you're not going to be traveling back and forth again if you've already got them down there. So those are some things to watch out for. You'll get mileage twice if you put travel in. So some of the courses we see this in a bunch of different courses, but the 2 that pop up all the time are SLI 6A and B and radar or LIDAR. Those are the 2 classes that we see this most common. Obviously, if it's a commuter trainee, this is not an issue because they're driving back and forth each day, so that's not an issue. This comes up when they're a resident trainee. Do we have some questions? Nope. We can handle them at the end if we've got more. Keep pushing through. Commuter mileage. You only get commuter mileage once a day. So for example, if you're sending somebody to 2 4-hour classes in a day, you're only going to get commuter mileage for one of those because they're probably not driving back and forth, but you're only going to get commuter mileage once a day. So I'll show you an example. This is the one I had a couple of weeks ago. So back-to-back classes, travel reimbursement for a commuter trainee. This is one I actually processed. The trainee travels as a commuter trainee to 9 separate classes over 4 days that are held back-to-back. They're all Plan 4s. Plan 4, like we said, allows for subsistence on lodging and travel, but because this is a commuter, only travel is going to be authorized. So this was the breakdown of the classes. Monday, they went to an 8-hour class. Tuesday, they went to 4 different classes, broken up by hours like that. And then Wednesday, 2 classes, and Thursday were 2 classes. So the way to do that is obviously because they're a commuter trainee, we can put in for mileage, whether they're a driver, well, if they're a passenger, they don't get mileage, but you can put in for mileage there. So then the next one, Tuesday, I just said, hey, put in for class 2. You can put in for travel on that one, and then 3, 4, and 5, just exclude them because you're not going to get mileage for those. I mean, you can pick any one of these classes, put travel in and just exclude the other ones. Same thing for the classes on Wednesday, 6 and 7, pick one of them and then just exclude the other one. And then Thursday, the same thing, exclude them. Now, sometimes I realize that this can be difficult based on how the classes show up on your end. But if it's something that you know is going to happen, just be aware of this, that we're not going to give you mileage for all 9 of those classes. You're only going to get it for 4 of them. The other training expenses can only be claimed once. So obviously there are a million exceptions to this. So you can attend the same course and get reimbursed. Commission procedure D22 does list classes that are exceptions. Most classes are going to be exceptions. So like PSP, if you need to go to updates, this happens very rarely where we have to deny for somebody attending the same class. And I'll give you the 2 examples where this happened. For example, an agency sent somebody to IA class, and then 2 months later, they sent them to another IA class. So when it's something like that, and I had a similar one with SWAT class, they went to a SWAT class, and then 3 months later, they went to another SWAT class, and it was a different presenter. When it's something like that, yeah, we're going to deny it. But if you went to an IA class and then 3 years later, you went to another IA class because there are updates or whatever, yeah, that's going to be fine. And like I said, I would say 99% of the time, this is not going to be an issue. It's just be careful when it's the scenarios I kind of outlined. Notice of appointment has to be on file for us to approve the TRR. We get quite a few of these where the NOAT is not on file with post. We will deny that. We're going to deny the TRR. In a situation like that, you can get the NOAT on file with us and then go ahead and resubmit the TRR for that. But those need to be on file, because if the NOAT's not on file, then technically they're not a paid employee of your agency as far as post is concerned. All right, so we'll go over these 3 reports that are at the bottom of your list right here. The first one, agency reimbursement summary. What that does is it basically gives you a month-by-month breakdown of how much money you've been reimbursed. It just shows what fund it comes from on our end. Not a big deal for you guys, but it will give you a monthly breakdown of what has been issued to your agency. The next one, the 8-hour cap. Officers are capped at 80 hours per fiscal year for reimbursement training. We do see quite a few officers get denied. Okay, I'll finish this one, then we'll answer the question. We do see a lot of TRs that get denied because somebody went over the 80 hours. So there is a report, like I said, you can pull up and see where your individual officers are at when it comes to the 80-hour cap. There are exceptions to that, and there's a link there for classes that are exceptions to the 80-hour cap. And we have a question.
Regarding the multiple courses in one day, your example applies to the same location for all courses taken in one day. But sometimes there's 2 different locations on the same day. Therefore, can mileage be reimbursed for both courses? Because they have to travel to do two different places.
You stumped me on that one. Right now, I'm gonna say no, but I'll research that a little bit more. I don't think that's gonna be possible, especially as a commuter trainee. To get that. I don't think we're gonna be able to do that, but I'll find out. Again, I don't think so. Sorry, I didn't have a better answer, but good question. Do we have any other ones? You're not live.
I have a TRR that said a deputy went to a class that he did not actually attend. How can I get rid of that?
So it's showing up on your list as a class that they attended, but they didn't. I just exclude them. How I showed you before, you can just exclude them.
Steve, I'd also add that they need to contact the presenter because that means they were entered on a roster for a class that they did not attend.
Yeah, good point. I would definitely reach out to them because it's gonna show up on their profile that they attended that class. So yeah, I would definitely look into that. It's gonna take a little bit of legwork on your end, but you wouldn't have to submit one, just exclude them as far as the TRR is concerned. Okay, the last report, I don't have a copy of it up here because it's a pretty extensive report. Basically, the monthly training reimbursement is basically just a ledger for the requested month. It's a month by month report, so you have to select the month you want. And it just reflects all the rosters and reimbursement request process for that particular period. You may submit a TRR in 1 month, but it may not get processed till the next month by us, just depending on how busy we are or if it's close to the end of the month. So if you see no reimbursement requested, doesn't necessarily mean you didn't ask for it. It just may mean that we haven't got to it yet. And in that case, if you have questions, obviously you can reach out and I'll show you an email here at the end that you can reach out to the reimbursement unit if you need to clarify that question. All right, so those are the 3 reports. We'll go into the State Controller Office audits. SCO is what we refer to them. So SCO conducts they conduct 14 audits annually for Post, and Post provides them with a list of agencies and presenters to be audited. Regulation does say that you guys do obviously need to maintain the records by the agency for a minimum of 3 years following the date of reimbursement for the specific course. So please hold on to all of your receipts and all that kind of stuff in the event you do get drawn the short straw to get audited. So I called at the SCO office and I asked him, I was like, hey, what are the biggest concerns that you guys see from your end? And he said, hands down, these are the 2. They said when agencies are submitting TRRs for a basic course, a lot of times they don't have supporting documentation to justify the reimbursement. And a lot of those basic course TRRs are some high dollar ones. They can be upwards of, I've seen them as high as $12,000 for reimbursement. So if you're going to ask for reimbursement for a basic course, be sure you have the records because you get $75 per day. And if you're listing them as a resident trainee, where you're putting them up in a hotel, be sure you have all that, the mileage. If the trainee has an agency car or their personal car, are you cutting them a check for the mileage? Or you guys have that car on file, that kind of stuff. So be sure that you're able to account for those dollars when it comes to a basic course. The other one the auditor told me was the miscalculation of backfill and no supporting documentation, specifically like did they have the overtime slip to tie the 2 together for the person that was at class and who was actually doing the backfill. So those are the 2 big ones that they said they see. Those are the 2 big ones that they commonly see where they see errors with the audits. So obviously some of the best practices with that, as I mentioned, OT slips. If they have assigned vehicles, do you have those vehicle numbers available? You know, rental cars, maintain the rental receipts, department credit card, hotel receipts, any payments to trainees. So if you're doing the commuter lunch and you're comping them back the dollar amount, be sure you have that. Most everybody does have an internal reimbursement process where you submit all those. You know, if you can keep those on file with your TRR file and the course roster, that kind of stuff, that would probably be a good practice to maintain. All right, and that's pretty much all I have. We're going to take questions. I would like everybody at the end, I do have a quick survey I would like everybody to take, and I'll pop that up here in a second. Let me go through this real quick. We'll continue to handle questions till I get to the end. If you have any more questions, there's an email right there, reimbursements@post.ca.gov. So if you have particular reimbursement questions, feel free to email them, or if you want to email me directly, mine was on the first slide. Also, if you have questions, you know, you have your regional consultants you can reach out to. A shameless plug for Post. If you're looking for a job and you want to come work at Post, you can go there. And so we'll go ahead and wrap up and answer any questions. So this, the TRR survey, it's 3 questions. It's real quick. If you take a picture with your phone, it'll take you directly to the TRR survey. Pretty simple questions. The big one that I would really like you guys to take time out and answer is, we notice when we process a lot of TRRs that are eligible for backfill, almost nobody puts in for backfill. Hardly at all does anybody ask for backfill reimbursement. And the biggest question is, we want to know why agencies don't submit for backfill. So there's a question on there. And if you could please take the time to answer that for me so we can maybe better address that. Maybe do we need to make the process easier? I don't know. We would like to know why. I mean, with all that money that's available, we would hope people would try to take advantage of it as much as possible. So that being said, do we have any questions?
Yes, there's a couple questions that people have in regards to reimbursement if they're not in EDI. So so basically, when they're putting in for reimbursement for CSO or other civilians, how do we process this in TRR reimbursement when we can't enter them in EDI?
I can't get them in EDI.
No, so I think what the question is if they're not a peace officer or a dispatcher, how does the process work in entering a TRR? Because it shows up basically when the roster is completed, correct? It'll show up on there.
But don't they have a post profile?
Not
If
for
they're showing up on a
CSO.
roster, they would have a post profile, right?
The post ID number is all that basically is needed.
Yeah, correct.
And how long, how many years of documentation should agencies hold on to?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years from the class you're asking for reimbursement. So you can see, so, you know, in January of 2022, you need to hold on to that for 3 years till, you know, January 2025, February till February 2025. So you should hold on to them for 3 years like that.
There's a question about the 80-hour cap on reimbursement. Should agencies be tracking that themselves, or is that something that Post will assist with when they submit a reimbursement claim and it's over the 80 hours?
So the algorithm with the TRR program automatically lets me know when I'm approving them that you've hit the 80-hour cap. And, you know, maybe you're not going to get any money for that class. The only reason I brought that up is just so you guys are aware that, hey, if you were expecting reimbursement, but that student was over the 80-hour cap and you were looking for that money, you're just not going to get it. So that's one of the reasons I brought that up. Yeah, we automatically will catch it, or on our end, it automatically gets calculated in the algorithm. But if you were really looking for that money and they went over the 8-hour cap, you're not going to get it. So I just don't want you guys to be surprised when you're going, wait a minute, what happened? And we were counting on that money.
There's a comment on the survey. It says it's not working. It is prompting our participant to sign into Microsoft.
Oh yeah, I did it in Microsoft Office. Sorry. Yeah, so if you have Microsoft Office, you probably have to log in and do it. I apologize if anybody has any inconvenience with that. That's the way I was told to do it.
Steve, I have another question that's been asked a couple times.
Sure.
So they've had cadets that have gone to an academy and they want to submit for reimbursement,
Yes.
but it's not on the list. Why is that?
It's not on their list. It could be maybe the class isn't done yet. Maybe the roster hasn't been submitted. And they could have not been appointed yet. That's possible. We do need completed rosters to process TRRs. If the roster's not in, and obviously that would be on the agency that hosted the class. If those aren't in yet, we can't process TRRs.
Steve, if I can add to that, the presenters are required by regulation to submit the roster within 10 days of the last day of the class. So if you have someone who went to post-certified training, still has not, the roster has not been submitted, contact the presenter directly. If you can't get that resolved, then contact your agency's regional post consultant.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have anything else?
Are trainees going to the academy available for any reimbursements?
Yes. Yeah, you could submit a TRR at the end of the academy. If they're sponsored.
And those are different, reimbursed differently than in-service training classes?
Yes, the calculation is different. So you are allowed, hold on, let me pull the regulation up. So for a basic course, you get $75 per day. Just a flat rate up to, is it 20 weeks? Or 800 hours, $75 per day for that. It comes up as a regular TRR, it just gets calculated different in the algorithm.
Steve, there's another question.
Yep.
When will reimbursement rates be raised? Maybe they're asking about mileage.
Working on that. That's in the process. We're working on that right now. We have to go through the OAL process and stuff like that. So I'm working on that as we speak right now.
No, I just want to make a comment from Cheryl Smith at Post. It says they need to make sure that they have a notice of appointment for trainees attending the basic academy in order to get reimbursed. So those questions regarding and circling around about the academy, if you put your folks in as trainees in EDI, then you'll be able to get reimbursed after when they complete the basic course.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate that. Survey's not working. Sorry about the survey. Worked yesterday.
Steve, confirming that jail deputies are not eligible for reimbursement for attending the academy.
No, I don't think so. No, they're not. Jail deputies are not. Yes. Any more questions?
There's still questions, Steve, about if somebody submits a TRR and then they realize that there needs to be changes on it, how would they correct a TRR that's already been submitted?
So use that email. reimbursements at post.ca.gov. Send an email into that. Obviously, give us as much info as you can so we can make the corrections on our end.
Steve, there's a question about if an officer drives a city vehicle and the agency wants to submit for mileage reimbursement, what kind of vehicle records do they need to keep?
It's a good idea to have, I can't speak for every agency, but most agencies, you guys identify your cars by numbers, like, 122-308 or something along those lines. As long as you can tie that trainee to that car, have something on it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Also, there's a question about a recruit that attended the academy but did not complete it. Would the agency still be allowed to submit a reimbursement for the part of the academy that was attended?
Yes, there's only 2 classes that you can do that for. Otherwise, you have to pass every class to get reimbursement, and that is basic academy you can, and then the motorcycle class. But with the motorcycle class, we have to get permission from the executive director to issue reimbursement. But yes, for the basic class, if somebody does not make it all the way through, you can submit for partial reimbursement.
There's somebody asking about posting the emails again with the post contact information for further questioning. Can you post the email? Oh, there you go.
Anything else?
There's somebody asking if there will be similar trainings for PRRs or presenter reimbursement requests.
Standby to standby on that. We haven't discussed that. It's a good question.
It says, just for clarification, we could not submit for travel and or tuition for any class within 25 miles of the agency's headquarters.
No, that's not true. Hold on, I think I know what they're looking at. Let me find that regulation. You can put in for mileage. Hold on, I'm trying to find, I know where that 25-mile thing is.
Okay, Steve's, my understanding is for tuition, you can put in if it's covered under the post plan. For
Correct.
mileage, it has to be 25 miles one way unless it's a plan like a 6 or a 7.
Steve, do you have the URL for where this video is going to be posting? How should people participating who want to review it get access to it?
So what I'll do is at the end of this, when I email out all the answers to the questions that we haven't been able to answer and a recap of it, I'll email you guys the link also where this is going to be posted. It'll be under the link that's up there now, post.ca.gov/reimbursement program. It will be on there also when we get done, when I get it posted. We have to send it over and have it they have to transfer the format or something like that so we can actually put it on our website. So it'll probably take me about a week before I get this thing posted and get the questions back out to you guys, but it'll be up there. we have any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Here's
It's like-
another one about the academy. If we did not assign sponsored trainees to attend the basic academy into EDI, so they went to the academy, they weren't assigned as trainees, but they're now appointed a peace officer, can they retroactively get reimbursed for the academy?
No. No, the best thing to do is appoint him as a trainee. If that's what you're looking to do. Do we have any other questions or we can wrap up? Standing by.
Trainees going to the academy, can they get mileage from the agency to the academy? And is there a mileage cap? Or a minimum mileage amount?
It's going to depend if they're a commuter or a resident trainee. So if you're putting them up in a hotel, they can get mileage to and from the hotel to the academy site. And then they get a round trip for the weekends. So if they have to come home on the weekend, that kind of stuff. But if they're a commuter trainee and they're driving to the academy back and forth every day, then yes, you get mileage. But you get it from your headquarters to the academy site. I'm trying to find where that 25-mile thing is.
Yeah, mileage under 25 is only eligible if it's a plan 5, 6, or 7.
Oh, there we go.
That's documented in post regulation 1015 F 6A.
Steve, could you explain how funds are distributed via TRR? Because there's a question about how would I know how much money is allocated to my agency?
The funds are not, it's not like we give, $10,000 to one agency. That dollar amount that I showed you at the beginning, the 33 million, that's available for everybody until we run out. Obviously, you can see we haven't run out. So you can submit until post runs out of money. So it's not like an individual agency gets a certain dollar amount and then we cut you off.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So if agencies are submitting trainees for mileage from the agency to the academy, how would they go about documenting that? Or if they're audited, what kind of documentation are they looking for? Like the state?
So if, again, depending on, what kind of car they're taking. So if they're driving their personal vehicle, are you reimbursing them for that mileage? Because the mileage is going to be automatically calculated on the TRR based on your headquarters to the academy site. So let's say it's 15 miles. So it's 30 miles round trip each day. So are you reimbursing the trainee for their mileage? In that sense, you would then, maintain a copy of the check that you paid to the trainee, or otherwise, what kind of mileage, if they're using an agency vehicle, what vehicle was it? And what was the mileage that was tracked for that vehicle? So you can show that you guys incurred that cost.
Okay, this question comes up a lot is, does post indicate which payments are being reimbursed? Or do they just issue the lump sum? Is there any indication which TRRs are being paid out for that one, for the check?
That would be in your reports. Your reports will show you that. One of those reports, the monthly one, or what was the other one? Those are going to show you. The third one, monthly reimbursement, can show you month by month of what each individual trainee was paid for what class. There's a breakdown of that on that report.
Could you, Steve, make a clarification on the notice of appointment termination and how that differs from an employee who is non-sworn, not a dispatcher, attending a class and being given a post ID number? So when a training manager is running the reimbursement report, there's no post profile to that person, even though they have a post ID number. Can you explain why that would happen?
No, because I don't know.
Okay, so the reason that would be that is through a notice of appointment termination, agencies would enter a peace officer, dispatcher, reserve as part of their agency roster. That's not the case for other non-sworn, non-dispatcher employees. So they may have a post ID number because they attended a post-certified course that's generated through the roster creation entry process by the presenter, but they are not going to be listed on your agency roster.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Good. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, I appreciate everybody joining us. Hopefully we were able to clarify and not confuse everybody on this. I apologize for the survey at the end. I promise you it was working before I started this. So again, thank you very much. You know, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.